The lights were too bright. Alice couldn't breathe. Her name echoed through the room like a death sentence. And now, gentlemen, our final offering of the evening. A rare edition. From West Africa. 26 years old. Untouched by our usual trade. Ladies and gentlemen, Alice. The applause was polite, clinical, like they were admiring a painting. She stood on the platform, legs trembling beneath the silk dress they had forced her into. Red. Too tight. Too revealing. The kind of dress that made her feel like meat on a hook. Her wrists ached where they had restrained her earlier. Not with rope, but with the invisible chains of debt, desperation, and lies. This couldn't be real. But it was. Around her, men in tailored suits leaned back in leather chairs, glasses of whiskey catching the amber light. Some smiled. Others didn't bother hiding their hunger. She searched the crowd for Felix, the man who had promised her work, dignity, a way to save her brother. He was there, front row, arms crossed, smiling. Beside him, Hannah, his girlfriend, leaned in and whispered something into his ear. They laughed together. Alice's stomach turned. Starting bid, the auctioneer announced smoothly, is 50,000 USD. A hand went up immediately, then another, then 3 more. The numbers climbed. 60, 75, 90. Her vision blurred. Her knees buckled, but she forced herself to remain standing. This wasn't happening. This wasn't happening. But the gavel was real. The voices were real. The men bidding on her body, her future, her life, they were real. Then, from the shadows at the back of the room, a hand rose. Slow, deliberate, unhurried. The room fell silent. Even the auctioneer hesitated. 200,000, a voice said. Low, calm, absolute. Alice's eyes snapped toward the sound. She couldn't see his face, only the outline of a man leaning against the far wall, half hidden in darkness. But she felt his gaze. It burned through the room, through the crowd, through her. The auctioneer cleared his throat. 200,000 from the gentleman in the back. Do I hear? 300,000. A fat old man interrupted, standing now, his smile gone. The man in the shadows didn't move. 500,000, he said. Gasps rippled through the room. 600, the fat old man spat. 1 million. The room erupted into whispers. Alice's heart pounded, so hard it felt like it might tear through her chest. The fat old man stared at the man in the shadows, rage twisting his features. But he didn't raise his hand again. He couldn't. The auctioneer's gavel came down with a crack that echoed like a gunshot. Sold. Alice's knees finally gave out. 2 men in black suits appeared at her sides, lifting her gently but firmly, guiding her off the platform. She turned her head, searching for the man who had bought her. But he was already gone. If you're already hooked, hit that subscribe button, because this story is just getting started. And trust me, you won't want to miss what happens next. 6 months earlier, Alice had been a different woman. Not hopeful. Hope was a luxury she couldn't afford, but functional. Surviving. She worked 2 jobs in Seoul. One at a late-night convenience store, the other cleaning offices before dawn. Her apartment was the size of a closet. Her meals consisted of instant noodles, and her phone screen was cracked in 3 places. None of that had mattered, because her brother was alive. Her brother was 12 years old, sick since birth. He had a rare blood disorder that required treatments most hospitals couldn't even pronounce, let alone afford. Every one Alice earned went to him. Every breath she took was for him. When the hospital called to say they could no longer continue treatment without payment, full payment, up front, no exceptions, she didn't hesitate. She borrowed. From neighbors. From loan sharks. From anyone who would listen. It still wasn't enough. That was when she met Felix. He appeared at the convenience store one night, charming and polished in a way that felt out of place among the flickering fluorescent lights and expired snacks. You look exhausted, he said in perfect English, his Korean accent softened by years abroad. Alice barely looked up. She told him she was fine. You don't look fine. He smiled. You look like someone who needs help. She should have walked away, but desperation made her careless. She said she was listening. Felix leaned against the counter, his expensive cologne cutting through the stale air. He told her he ran a business, import-export. He said he needed someone he could trust, someone discreet, someone who wouldn't ask too many questions. She asked what kind of business it was, the kind that pays well. Her fingers tightened around the edge of the counter as she asked how well. He named a figure that stole the breath from her lungs. It was more than she would make in 2 years. She asked what she had to do. Felix's smile widened as he told her she only had to work for him. Be available. Handle things when he needed them handled. She asked if that was all. He said it was. She knew it sounded too good to be true. But her brother's face flashed in her mind. Pale, fragile, slipping away a little more every day. She agreed. Felix extended his hand and called her a smart girl. She shook it and signed her life away. The first month wasn't bad. Felix put her in a small apartment. Nothing fancy, but clean. He gave her a phone, a stipend, and a list of tasks that seemed harmless enough. She picked up packages, delivered envelopes, smiled at business meetings, and said nothing. She convinced herself it was legitimate. Then Hannah arrived. Felix's girlfriend was beautiful in the way sharp things are beautiful. Edges and venom wrapped in designer clothes. She hated Alice on sight. She called her a charity case the first time they met, looking her up and down like something stuck to her shoe. Alice bit her tongue and said she was only there to work. Hannah laughed, a cold, brittle sound, and told her not to confuse pity with importance. From that moment on, Hannah made Alice's life miserable. She accidentally spilled drinks on her, mocked her accent, her clothes, her hair. She made sure Alice was always the one cleaning, the one running errands, the one humiliated in front of Felix's associates. And Felix watched. He never stopped it. Sometimes he even laughed. Alice told herself it didn't matter. She could endure anything as long as her brother continued to receive his treatment. But late at night, alone in the apartment Felix had given her, she would lie awake staring at the ceiling, wondering how long she could keep swallowing her pride before it finally choked her. 3 months in, Felix's mask slipped completely. "I need you to come with me tonight," he said one evening, his tone leaving no room for argument. "Where?" Alice asked. "A party. You'll wear what I tell you to wear. You'll smile. You'll keep your mouth shut." Her stomach twisted. "What kind of party?" Felix's eyes darkened. "The kind where you remember who owns you." She flinched. "You don't own me." He stepped closer, crowding her space. "Don't I? Who paid your brother's hospital bills? Alice? Who gave you a roof over your head? Who's keeping you from ending up back on the street?" Her throat tightened, the words lodging painfully there. "You owe me," Felix said softly, his voice silk wrapped around steel. "And tonight, you're going to start paying me back." The dress arrived that afternoon. Red silk, backless, so short it barely covered her thighs. Hannah delivered it herself, her smile sharp and venomous. "Felix picked it out personally," Hannah purred. "He has such good taste, don't you think?" Alice stared at the dress, her hands trembling. "I'm not wearing that." Hannah's smile widened. "Oh, you will. Or your brother's treatment stop. Tonight." Alice's breath caught. "You wouldn't. Try me." In that moment, understanding settled over her like ice. She wasn't an employee. She was a possession. That night, Felix drove her to a mansion on the outskirts of Seoul, the kind of place that didn't exist on maps and wasn't meant to be found. Inside, the air was thick with cigar smoke and expensive perfume. Men in tailored suits drifted through rooms lined with crystal chandeliers and marble floors, their laughter low and predatory. Alice felt every eye on her as Felix led her through the crowd. "Stay close," he murmured, "and smile." She tried. Her skin crawled with every passing second. They entered a large room where the lights were dim, velvet chairs arranged in neat rows facing a raised platform at the front. It looked like a theater. It felt like a trap. Felix guided her into a seat near the front, his grip tight on her arm. "What is this?" Alice whispered. Felix didn't answer. The lights dimmed further. A man in a tailored suit stepped onto the platform, a microphone in hand. "Gentlemen," he said smoothly, "welcome to tonight's exclusive event." Alice's pulse quickened. "We have a rare selection for you this evening," the man continued. "Items you won't find anywhere else." Items. Her stomach dropped. The man gestured toward the side of the stage. A woman was led out, young, shaking, dressed in white. The auctioneer smiled. "Our first offering." And with cold, creeping horror, Alice realized exactly what kind of party this was. Alice couldn't move. She couldn't breathe. She couldn't think. The woman on the stage was crying silently, her shoulders shaking as men called out numbers, as if she were livestock. 40,000. 50. 65. The gavel came down. Sold. The woman was led away, and another replaced her. Then another. Then another. Alice's hands clenched around the armrests so tightly her knuckles turned white. This can't be real. This can't be real. But Felix's hand resting on her thigh told her otherwise. "Relax," he whispered, his breath hot against her ear. You're not on the roster. She jerked away from him. What? His smile was cruel. Not tonight, anyway. Her blood turned to ice. You brought me here to show you what happens when people don't pay their debts, Felix said calmly. You owe me, Alice. And I always collect. Hannah leaned over from the seat beside him, her eyes glittering with malice. Don't worry, sweetheart, she cooed. You'll get your turn soon enough. Alice shot to her feet, her chair scraping loudly against the floor. Every head in the room turned toward her. Felix's hand snapped out, gripping her wrist hard enough to bruise. Sit down. Let go of me, Alice said, her voice shaking. Sit down, or I'll make a call right now, and your brother's machines get unplugged. Her vision blurred with tears. She sat. She stayed. She watched. And with every passing second, the truth settled deeper into her bones. She wasn't going to escape this. The final woman was led off the stage. The auctioneer smiled, adjusting his microphone. And now, gentlemen, we have something special. A last-minute addition. Alice's heart stopped. No. From West Africa. 26 years old. Educated. Elegant. And completely unspoiled. Felix stood, yanking Alice to her feet. She struggled against him. No. No, you said. I lied. Felix said simply. Hannah laughed. A bright, delighted sound. Goodbye, Alice, she sang. It's been fun. Two men in black suits appeared at Alice's sides, their grips firm, but not brutal. She fought anyway. Please, she gasped, her voice breaking. Please, I'll do anything. I'll work harder. I'll. Felix leaned in close, his voice soft and final. You already are working. This is your job. And then she was on the platform. The lights were too bright. The room was too quiet. And Alice, strong, stubborn, surviving Alice, shattered. The auctioneer's voice cut through the silence. Starting bid is 50,000 USD. Hands went up. Numbers climbed. Alice couldn't hear them anymore. All she heard was the roar in her ears, the pounding of her heart, the silent scream trapped in her throat. She looked down at Felix. He was smiling. Hannah was smiling too. They were enjoying this. And in that moment, something inside Alice hardened. She hated them. Not the passive, swallowed down kind of hate. The kind that burned. The kind that promised revenge. But what could she do? She was powerless. Alone. Already sold. Then, 200,000. The voice came from the back of the room. Low. Steady. Unfamiliar. Alice's head snapped toward the sound. A man stood in the shadows, half hidden by the dim lighting. She couldn't see his face, but she felt his presence like a shockwave. A fat old man stood abruptly, his smile faltering. 300,000, he said sharply. The man in the shadows didn't hesitate. 500,000. Gasps rippled through the crowd. Alice's breath caught. The fat old man's jaw clenched. 600. 1 million. The room erupted into whispers. The fat old man stared toward the back, rage twisting his features, but he didn't raise his hand again. He couldn't. The auctioneer brought the gavel down hard. Sold to the gentleman in the back. Felix laughed, low and menacing. I'm rich, he said. Alice's knees buckled. The men in black suits caught her before she hit the floor, steadying her as they guided her off the stage. She twisted around, searching for the man who had bought her. But he was already gone. They took her to a car. Black. Expensive. Silent. Alice sat in the back seat, her hands trembling in her lap, her thoughts spiraling out of control. Who was he? What did he want? Was this better? Or worse? The driver said nothing. The city lights blurred past the window, streaks of gold and white against the dark. And Alice felt the last shreds of her old life slipping away. The car pulled up to a house. No, a compound. High walls rose around it. Iron gates sealing the entrance, security cameras watching from every angle. Alice's stomach twisted. Of course. Another prison. The driver stepped out and opened her door, gesturing for her to get out. She did, her legs weak, the dress still clinging to her like a second skin she desperately wanted to tear away. The front door opened. A woman stepped out, older, elegant, with kind eyes that seemed at odds with the cold, fortified place behind her. Come inside, the woman said gently. You must be exhausted. Alice hesitated. Where is he? He'll see you when you're ready, the woman replied. For now, let's get you cleaned up. Alice wanted to argue, to demand answers, but she had no fight left. She followed the woman inside. The house was different, not opulent in the loud, excessive way Felix's spaces had been. This place was restrained, controlled. Every piece of furniture, every painting, every detail looked deliberate, chosen with care. It felt like the home of someone who didn't need to prove anything. The woman led her upstairs to a bedroom. It was large and spotless, dominated by a bed that looked impossibly soft. "There's a bathroom through that door," the woman said. "Take your time. I'll bring you something to eat." Alice stared at her. "Why are you being nice to me?" The woman's expression softened. "Because you've been through enough tonight." She left, closing the door quietly behind her. Alice stood alone in the center of the room, her thoughts spiraling. None of this made sense. She had been bought, owned, yet this didn't feel like ownership. It felt like something she couldn't name. Alice showered until the water turned cold. She scrubbed her skin until it stung, trying to erase the memory of Felix's hands, Hannah's laughter, the weight of all those watching eyes. When she finally stepped out, wrapped in a towel, she saw clothes laid neatly on the bed. Soft cotton pants, a loose shirt, nothing revealing, nothing meant to display her. She dressed quickly, her hands still trembling. A knock at the door made her flinch. "Come in," she said, her voice rough. The woman entered carrying a tray. Rice, soup, tea, simple, warm. Alice's stomach growled despite everything. "Eat," the woman said gently. "You'll feel better." Alice sat on the edge of the bed, the tray resting in her lap. She took one bite, then another, and then the tears came. Not loud, broken sobs, just silent tears sliding down her face as she ate, her shoulders trembling while she tried to hold herself together. The woman didn't leave. She sat beside Alice on the bed, saying nothing, simply being there. And for the first time in months, Alice didn't feel completely alone. Much later, she didn't know how much time had passed. The woman finally rose and left the room. Alice lay back on the bed, exhausted yet unable to sleep. Her body was heavy, but her mind refused to rest. It kept circling back to the man in the shadows. Who was he? What did he want from her? The door opened. Alice pushed herself upright instantly, her heart slamming against her ribs. A figure stood in the doorway. Tall, broad-shouldered, silent. He stepped forward into the light. Alice's breath caught. He was younger than she had expected. Mid-30s, perhaps. Sharp, controlled features. Dark eyes that seemed to strip away pretenses and see straight through her. Handsome in a way that felt dangerous. He didn't smile, didn't speak at first. He simply looked at her. Alice forced herself to hold his gaze. "Are you going to tell me what you want?" she asked, her voice steadier than she felt. He tilted his head slightly. "I want you to rest." His voice was low and calm, touched by an accent that softened the edges of his Korean. "That's it," Alice said. "You paid $1 million for me to rest. I paid $1 million to get you out of that room." She blinked. "Why?" He didn't answer right away. Instead, he moved closer, his steps unhurried, precise. There was something about the way he carried himself, controlled, deliberate, that made her pulse quicken. Not from fear, from something she didn't want to name. "Because," he said quietly, "I owed you." Alice frowned. "I don't know you." "You did," he replied. "Once." He reached into his pocket and pulled out something small. A coin. Worn. Dented. Darkened by a stain she recognized instantly. Blood. He held it out to her. 5 years ago," he said. "Soul. An alley behind a nightclub." Alice stared at the coin, her thoughts racing backward. 5 years ago. She had been new to the city then. Lost. Desperate. She remembered taking a shortcut through an alley and finding a man collapsed on the ground, bleeding heavily. Stabbed. Dying. She should have run. But she hadn't. She had torn off her scarf to stop the bleeding, called for help, and stayed with him until the ambulance arrived. She had never seen his face, never known his name. She had left before anyone could ask questions. Alice lifted her gaze to his, her heart pounding. "That was you." He nodded slowly. "You saved my life," he said. "I don't forget debts." Alice's hands trembled in her lap. "So you bought me to what?" she asked quietly. "Pay me back. To free you." The words lingered between them, heavy and unreal. Alice didn't know how to respond. She didn't know what she was supposed to feel. He turned toward the door, then paused. "You're not a prisoner here," he said. "You can leave whenever you want. But if you stay..." He looked back at her, his gaze steady. "You'll be safe." Then he was gone. Alice remained seated on the bed, surrounded by silence, her thoughts spinning. Safe. She realized she had almost forgotten what that word meant. Alice didn't sleep that night. She lay in the unfamiliar bed, staring up at the ceiling, replaying everything over and over again. The auction, the man in the shadows, the coin. You saved my life. Years ago, she had helped a stranger because it had been the right thing to do. Nothing more. She had never expected gratitude, never expected anything in return. Certainly not this. As the first light of dawn slipped through the curtains, one thought slowly settled in her mind. She was free. Felix didn't owe her anymore. The debt was gone. Her brother's treatments were covered. Mrs. Shin had told her that the night before, almost casually, as if $1 million medical bill meant nothing at all. Alice could walk out the front door right now and never look back. So why didn't she? Morning came quietly. Alice found clothes laid out in the closet. Simple, comfortable, unmistakably her size. She dressed and made her way downstairs, guided by the smell of coffee. The kitchen was enormous but warm, sunlight pouring through floor-to-ceiling windows. Mrs. Shin was already there, moving calmly as she prepared breakfast. "Good morning," she said with a genuine smile. "Did you sleep?" "Not really," Alice admitted. Mrs. Shin nodded, unsurprised. "It takes time. Sit. Eat." Alice sat at the kitchen island as a plate was set in front of her. Food she didn't remember asking for, but suddenly needed. "Where is he?" Alice asked. "Mr. Park is working," Mrs. Shin replied. "He's always working." "Mr. Park, Park Chan-woo," Mrs. Shin said, her tone respectful. "Most people just call him Park." Alice repeated the name silently. "Park Chan-woo, the man who had saved her. What does he do?" Alice asked carefully. Mrs. Shin's expression remained calm, but something unreadable flickered in her eyes. "He's a businessman." Alice recognized a non-answer when she heard one. "What kind of business?" Mrs. Shin met her gaze directly. "The kind that keeps you safe. The kind that makes men like Felix very, very afraid." Alice's pulse quickened. She didn't finish the sentence. She didn't have to. Mrs. Shin placed a cup of coffee in front of her. "Mr. Park is many things," she said quietly. "But he is not a monster, and he will never hurt you." Alice wanted to believe that. But once, she had believed Felix too. 3 days passed. Alice saw Park only in brief moments. He would appear in the mornings, dressed in dark suits that looked like they cost more than everything she owned combined. He would nod at her, ask if she needed anything. She would say no, and then he would leave. It was strange. He never touched her, never demanded anything, never stayed in the same room for more than a few minutes. It was the opposite of everything she had ever experienced with Felix, and it unnerved her. On the fourth night, Alice found him in his study. The door was open. He sat at his desk, reviewing documents, a glass of whiskey untouched beside him. She knocked softly. His eyes lifted, surprise flickering across his face before his expression smoothed into neutrality. "Alice, do you need something?" "Answers," she said, stepping inside. He gestured to the chair across from his desk. She sat, her heart hammering. "You said I could leave whenever I want." Alice said. "You can. Then why do I feel like a prisoner?" Park's jaw tightened slightly. "You're not." "I know," Alice interrupted, "but I don't understand any of this. You paid $1 million for me. You're giving me everything, and you won't even tell me why." Park leaned back in his chair, studying her. "I told you why. You saved my life. People don't do this for strangers who helped them once, years ago," Alice said. "There's something else. So tell me, who are you really?" Silence stretched between them. Finally, Park spoke. "Have you heard of the Jade Syndicate?" Alice's blood ran cold. Everyone in Seoul had heard of them. The most powerful criminal organization in South Korea. Untouchable. Ruthless. Run by ghosts no one had ever seen. "You're..." Alice's voice faltered. "I run the Southern Territories," Park said calmly. "Arms. Information. Protection. Import-export." Alice's mind raced. "Felix works for you." "Felix works for himself," Park said, his voice hardening. "He uses my name without permission. Takes liberties he was never granted. The auction was one of them." "You didn't know about it?" "I thought I was bidding on land acquisitions and weapons," Park said. "When they announced you," his hands flexed. "I didn't know Felix had gone that far." Alice processed this slowly. "So you bought me to punish him?" "I bought you because the moment I saw you on that platform, I knew exactly who you were," Park said. "The woman who saved me when I had nothing. Who asked for nothing in return. Who disappeared before I could even thank you." His dark eyes met hers. "I've been looking for you for 5 years, Alice." The confession hung in the air. Alice's breath caught. "What?" Park stood, moving to the window, his back to her. "Because I don't forget," he said quietly. "And because I owe you everything." Alice rose as well, her legs unsteady. You don't owe me anything. You saved my life when I was nobody. Park interrupted, turning to face her. When I was bleeding out in an alley after a deal gone wrong. When anyone else would have walked past. You stayed. His voice dropped lower. Do you know what that's worth in my world? Loyalty. Selflessness. Those things don't exist. But you gave them freely. Alice's throat tightened. I didn't do it for a reward. I know, Park said. That's exactly why you deserve one. He stepped closer. Not threatening. Not imposing. Just present. You can leave tomorrow if you want, Park said. I'll give you money. Protection. A new life anywhere in the world. But, Alice whispered. Park's gaze held hers. But if you stay, I will give you something else. What? Revenge. The word shot electricity down Alice's spine. Against Felix? Against everyone who hurt you. Park said. Felix. Hannah. Everyone in that room, who looked at you like you were nothing. Alice's hands trembled. Why would you do that? Park's expression didn't change, but something burned in his dark eyes. Because no one touches what's mine. Alice's pulse skyrocketed. I'm not yours. No. Park agreed quietly. Not yet. The words shouldn't have affected her. But they did. Heat flooded her cheeks. Her chest. Lower. She had been treated like property for months. But this felt different. This felt like a choice. What do you want from me? Alice asked, her voice barely steady. Park moved closer, until she could feel the heat radiating off him, smell the faint trace of his cologne. I want you to heal, he said. I want you to remember what it feels like to be safe, to be respected, to be wanted for who you are, not what someone can take from you. Alice's breath hitched, and then... Park's voice dropped to a near whisper. And then, if you want me, I'm yours. Alice couldn't move, couldn't speak. The space between them pulsed, electric, impossible. Park stepped back, breaking the moment. Think about it, he said. You have time. He returned to his desk, dismissing her gently. Alice left the study on shaking legs. For the first time since the auction, she felt something other than fear. She felt desire. Days passed, turning into a week. Alice explored the compound, read books from Park's library, and talked with Mrs. Shin. She tried to ignore the way her heart leapt every time Park entered her room. The way her skin heated when his gaze lingered a second too long. The way she found excuses to be near him. He never pushed, never demanded, but the tension between them grew thicker each day. One evening, Alice found him in the garden. He was smoking, staring at nothing, tension etched into every line of his body. Can't sleep? She asked. He turned, a flicker of surprise crossing his face. Never can, he admitted. Alice moved closer, wrapping her arms around herself against the cool night air. What are you thinking about? She asked. Park took a long drag from his cigarette, exhaling slowly. How to destroy a man without killing him. Alice's pulse quickened. Felix. Park nodded once. He needs to pay for what he did to you. But death is too easy. Too quick. What are you planning? She asked. A smile curved his mouth. Cold, beautiful, and terrifying all at once. Everything. 2 weeks after the auction, Park called Alice into his study. A thick folder lay on his desk. This is everything on Felix, Park said. His finances, his connections, his secrets. Alice opened the folder, flipping through pages of documents, photographs, and bank statements. He's broke, she said, disbelief threading her voice. He's been broke for months, Park confirmed. The auction was his last desperate attempt to cover his debts. Debts he owes to very dangerous people. People like you? Alice asked. Worse, Park replied calmly. People who don't care about honor or rules. People who will tear him apart when they realize he can't pay. Alice looked up at him. So what do we do? Park's eyes gleamed. We wait for now. The night of the gala arrived. Alice stood in front of the mirror in her room, barely recognizing the woman staring back at her. The dress Park had chosen was midnight blue. Elegant, commanding, powerful. It clung to her in a way that felt intentional, not exploitative. Her hair was swept up, her makeup flawless. She looked like she belonged in that world, like she owned it. A knock at the door made her turn. Park stepped inside and stopped. For the first time since she had met him, the carefully controlled mask he wore slipped. His eyes darkened, his jaw tightened. Alice, he breathed. She felt the weight of his gaze like a physical touch. Is it too much? She asked, suddenly uncertain. Park crossed the room in 3 long strides, stopping directly in front of her, close enough that she had to tilt her head back to meet his eyes. You're perfect, he said roughly. Alice's breath caught. Park lifted his hand slowly, deliberately, giving her every chance to pull away. She didn't. His fingers brushed her cheek, light as a whisper. After tonight, he said quietly, Felix will know exactly what he lost, and exactly who you belong to now. I don't belong to anyone, Alice whispered. Park's thumb traced her lower lip. No, he agreed. You don't. But I'm hoping you'll choose to belong with me. The distinction sent heat flooding through her. Park, she murmured. Chan Wu. He corrected softly. Call me Chan Wu. Chan Wu. Alice repeated, tasting his name. His eyes flared, and then his mouth was on hers. The kiss was fire. Chan Wu's hand cupped the back of Alice's neck, firm but reverent, as if she were something precious he had finally been allowed to hold. His mouth moved against hers with a hunger restrained for weeks, and Alice felt herself melting into it, into him. Her hands found his chest, feeling the hard muscle beneath his shirt, the racing of his heart that mirrored her own. He pulled back slightly, breathing hard, his forehead resting against hers. I wanted to do that since the moment I saw you on that platform, he admitted roughly. Alice's fingers curled into his shirt. Then why didn't you? Because you've been treated like property long enough, Chan Wu said, his voice low and raw. I needed you to choose me. Not because you owed me. Not because you had nowhere else to go. But because you wanted to. Alice's heart thundered in her chest. And if I choose you now? Chan Wu's eyes darkened with an intensity that made her knees weak. Then after tonight, after everyone sees exactly who you are now, I'm going to show you what it means to be worshipped instead of owned. Heat pooled low in Alice's belly. But before she could respond, Chan Wu stepped back, his control snapping into place like a steel door. But first, he said, voice steady again, we have a party to attend. He offered his arm. Alice took it, her body still humming with desire. The gala was everything Alice expected and worse. Crystal chandeliers, champagne fountains, women dripping in diamonds, men reeking of old money and older sins. They arrived together, but as they entered the grand foyer, Chan Wu's phone buzzed insistently. He glanced at it, expression darkening. I need to take this, he said quietly. Business that can't wait. Alice felt a flicker of nervousness. Now, Chan Wu's hand found her waist, pulling her close for a brief moment. 5 minutes, he promised. Go inside. Hold your head high. Remember, you're not the same woman they knew. You're stronger now. He pressed a kiss to her temple, his lips lingering. And if anyone bothers you, I'll destroy them. The promise sent a shiver down Alice's spine, not from fear, but from the certainty in his voice. Chan Wu disappeared down a hallway, phone already to his ear, his voice dropping into rapid Korean. Alice took a steadying breath and walked into the ballroom alone. The room was magnificent, marble floors polished to mirror brightness, soaring ceilings painted with elaborate frescoes, hundreds of souls elite mingling beneath chandeliers that cost more than most people's houses. Alice stepped inside. The midnight blue-dressed Chan Wu had chosen catching the light like liquid sapphire. Heads turned. Conversations paused. Whispers rippled through the crowd like wind through grass. Alice ignored them, moving toward the bar with measured steps, her posture perfect. She had just accepted a glass of champagne from a bartender when she felt them approaching. The air seemed to chill. Felix and Hannah. Well, Hannah's voice cut through the ambient noise like a blade. Look what the cat dragged in. Alice's hand tightened imperceptibly around her champagne flute, but she didn't turn immediately. She sipped first, savored it. Then slowly, she turned to face them. Felix looked exactly as she remembered. Handsome in that calculated way, his suit expensive, his smile cruel. But there was something else now, something strained around his eyes. Hannah stood beside him, draped in diamonds Alice knew were bought with dirty money, her beauty sharp and venomous. Alice, Felix called, loud enough for nearby guests to hear, his tone theatrical and mocking. I didn't realize they'd lowered the standards for attendance. How did you manage an invitation? Sleep with the event coordinator. Polite laughter rippled from a few nearby guests. Alice met his gaze steadily. I was invited, Felix, as a guest. You remember what those are, don't you? People who actually want to be here. Felix's smile tightened. Still pretending to have a spine, I see. That's adorable. Hannah circled around Alice like a predator, her heels clicking sharply against the marble. That dress, Hannah said with exaggerated concern. It's nice. For you. Did you rent it? I know a good second-hand shop if you need recommendations. More people were drifting closer, sensing drama. Phones subtly angled to capture whatever happened next. Alice kept her expression calm. The dress is mine, Hannah. But thank you for your concern. It's touching that you still think about me. Think about you. Hannah laughed, brittle and sharp. Honey, we barely remembered you existed until we saw you here. You were just, what was the word Felix used? Oh, right. Inventory. The word hit like a physical blow, but Alice refused to flinch. Felix stepped closer, emboldened by Hannah's cruelty and the growing audience. You really thought you could just disappear and reinvent yourself, he said, voice dropping into false intimacy. Everyone here knows what you were, Alice. What you are. A charity case who thought she was worth more than the debt she owed. I pay my debt, Alice said quietly. Did you? Felix's eyes glittered with malice. Or did someone else pay it for you? Tell me, Alice, what exactly did you have to do to earn your freedom? I'm curious what the going rate was. The implication was clear. Disgusting. Several guests gasped softly, others leaning in with barely concealed interest. Alice felt heat rising in her chest. Not shame, but fury. You want to know what I did? Felix, she said, her voice gaining strength. I survived you. I survived your lies, your abuse, and your pathetic attempt to break me. That's what I did. Felix's expression darkened. Watch your mouth. Or what? Alice interrupted. You'll sell me again? Oh wait, you can't. Because you don't owe me anymore. You never really did. Hannah stepped forward, her face twisted with rage. You ungrateful bitch, she hissed. Felix gave you everything. A place to stay. Food. Purpose. And this is how you repay him? With disrespect. He gave me nothing. Alice said coldly. He trapped me. Used me. And then tried to sell me like cattle to pay his debts. That's a lie. Felix shouted, drawing even more attention. The circle of onlookers had grown considerably now, smartphones openly recording. Alice felt the weight of dozens of eyes, but she didn't care anymore. She was done being silent. Is it a lie? Alice asked. Everyone here saw the auction 3 weeks ago. The exclusive event at the mansion on the east side. The one where women were sold to the highest bidder. Were you there, Mrs. Choi? She looked directly at a prominent socialite in the crowd, who went pale and looked away. How about you, Mr. Park? Alice continued, addressing a businessman. You were in the third row, if I remember correctly. The man's face flushed red as his wife turned to stare at him. You're delusional, Hannah spat. Am I? Alice met her gaze directly. Or are you just afraid of what happens when people find out the truth? That your entire lifestyle is funded by human trafficking? That every bag you carry, every trip you take, every piece of jewelry you wear is paid for with other people's suffering? Hannah's hand flew up. For a moment, Alice thought she was going to be struck, but Felix grabbed Hannah's wrist, pulling her back. That's enough, he said, voice shaking with barely controlled rage. He stepped so close to Alice she could smell the expensive cologne masking the stench of desperation beneath. You think you're clever, he said softly, viciously. You think because someone bought you that you're special now? You're still nothing, Alice. Just a whore with a new owner. The words hung in the air. Then Felix made his fatal mistake. He slapped her. The crack echoed through the ballroom like a gunshot. Alice's head snapped to the side, pain exploding across her cheek. Her champagne glass fell from her hand, shattering on the marble floor. The crowd gasped collectively. Several women cried out in shock. Phones captured everything. Alice stumbled, catching herself on a nearby table, her hand flying to her face. The pain was sharp and immediate, but worse was the humiliation. Being struck in front of hundreds of people, reduced once again to something powerless and small. Tears burned in her eyes, but she refused to let them fall. Not here. Not now. Not ever again. Felix stood over her, his hand still raised, breathing hard, his face twisted with rage and something that looked like fear. You don't get to speak to me like that, he hissed. The ballroom had gone utterly silent. Even the music had stopped. And then, from the entrance, a voice cut through the silence like a blade through silk. Remove your hand. Every head in the ballroom turned toward the doors. Park Chan-woo stood at the entrance, and the temperature seemed to drop 10 degrees. He wasn't running, wasn't rushing. He walked with deliberate, measured steps, each one echoing in the frozen silence. His eyes were locked on Felix with an intensity that promised violence. The crowd parted before him like water before a ship's prow, people scrambling to get out of his way. Alice watched him approach, her hand still pressed to her burning cheek, and felt something shift inside her. Not fear, relief, and something darker. Something primal. Chan Wu reached her in seconds that felt like hours. His first action was to turn to Alice, his expression transforming instantly from murderous to tender. "Let me see," he said softly, his hand coming up to gently tilt her face toward the light. Alice lowered her hand. The red mark was already darkening, the outline of Felix's fingers visible against her brown skin. Something flickered across Chan Wu's face. Rage so profound it was almost peaceful in its certainty. "Did he hurt you anywhere else?" Chan Wu asked, his voice dangerously quiet. Alice shook her head. "Just my face." Chan Wu's jaw clenched hard enough that Alice could see the muscle jump. He reached up with infinite care and brushed his thumb just below the bruise, so gentle it barely qualified as touch. "I'm going to kill him," Chan Wu said conversationally. "Chan Wu, not tonight," he continued in that same calm voice. "But soon." And slowly. Then he turned to face Felix. The transformation was instant and absolute. The tender man who touched Alice's face was gone. In his place stood something cold and terrifying. Felix had backed up several steps, his earlier bravado evaporating. "Park," he said, his voice shaking. "This is a misunderstanding." "You put your hands on her," Chan Wu said, each word precisely enunciated. He took a step forward. Felix took 2 steps back. "She was disrespecting me." "She," Chan Wu interrupted, his voice dropping even lower, "is under my protection. And you just struck her. In public. In front of witnesses." He took another step forward, and this time Felix stumbled backward into Hannah. "Do you understand what you've done?" Chan Wu asked softly. The entire ballroom was watching now, hundreds of eyes locked on the scene, phones recording every second. Felix tried to summon his courage. "You can't do anything to me here. Not in front of all these people." "Can I?" Chan Wu's smile was terrifying in its emptiness. Chan Wu raised his right hand and delivered a sharp backhand slap. Felix stumbled backward, clutching his cheek, while Hannah shrieked and rushed to his side. Chan Wu turned calmly to address the entire ballroom, his voice carrying effortlessly across the stunned silence. "Does anyone here object to me removing this man from the premises?" Silence answered him. Not a single person spoke. Several people actually shook their heads. Chan Wu turned back to Felix. "It seems you have no friends here after all." 2 men in dark suits emerged smoothly from the crowd. Chan Wu's security, Alice realized, who must have been stationed throughout the gala. "Escort Mr. Kim and his companion from the building," Chan Wu said evenly, "and make sure they understand they are no longer welcome at any establishment in this city." "You can't do this," Hannah shrieked. "We were invited." Chan Wu finally acknowledged her existence, his gaze sliding to her with cold disdain. "Your invitation has been revoked. Permanently." The security guard stepped forward. Felix made one last desperate attempt. "I have powerful friends." "You had powerful acquaintances," Chan Wu corrected. "But I am Park Chan Wu, and as of this moment, you have nothing." The name rippled visibly through the room. Even Alice, who already knew who Chan Wu was, felt the weight of it spoken aloud before Seoul's elite. The guards took Felix and Hannah by the arms, not roughly, but firmly enough to make resistance pointless. As they were led away, Felix twisted back, his face contorted with impotent rage. "This isn't over." Chan Wu's expression didn't change. "Yes," he said quietly. "It is." Felix and Hannah were dragged from the ballroom. The doors closed behind them with a finality that felt like a coffin lid slamming shut. Chan Wu turned back to Alice, and once again his expression softened completely. He held out his hand. "Come, we're leaving." Alice took his hand without hesitation. He pulled her gently to his side, his arm wrapping protectively around her waist as they walked through the silent ballroom together, every eye following them. At the entrance, Chan Wu paused and turned back one last time. "If anyone here has questions about what happened tonight," he said, his voice carrying clearly, "I suggest you forget them. This matter is closed." No one argued. They left. The car ride back to the compound was silent for the first few minutes. Chan Wu sat beside Alice, his hand resting on her thigh, his thumb tracing absent patterns that were meant to soothe but instead sent heat spiraling through her. His other hand worked his phone with quick, precise movements. Messages sent, calls made, plans set in motion. Alice watched the city lights blur past the window, her cheeks still throbbing. "Does it hurt?" Chan Wu asked without looking up from his phone. "Yes." His hand tightened slightly on her thigh. "Good." Alice turned to look at him, confused. Chan Wu finally met her gaze, and the expression on his face stole her breath. Good, because it gives me justification for what I'm about to do to him, he clarified calmly. By this time tomorrow, Felix Kim will wish I'd killed him tonight. What are you going to do? Alice asked. Chan Wu's smile was cold, beautiful, and absolutely merciless. Everything. They arrived at the compound just after midnight. Chan Wu helped Alice from the car. His touch gentle despite the violence she could feel coiled beneath his calm exterior. Mrs. Shin was waiting inside, ice wrapped in soft cloth and a first aid kit in hand. Let me see, dear, she said softly, guiding Alice to sit. Chan Wu stood nearby, watching with an intensity that made the air feel charged. Mrs. Shin examined Alice's cheek with practiced efficiency, applying the ice with gentle pressure. It will bruise, she said matter-of-factly, but nothing is broken. You'll heal. Thank you, Alice murmured. Mrs. Shin patted her shoulder and left quietly, sensing the conversation that needed to happen. The moment they were alone, Chan Wu moved. He knelt in front of Alice, his hands coming to rest on her knees, his eyes searching her face. I should have been there, he said, his voice rough with guilt. I should have stayed by your side. You came when I needed you, Alice said. Not soon enough. His hands tightened slightly. He put his hands on you. Hit you. In front of everyone. Chan Wu. I'm going to destroy him, Alice, Chan Wu said, his voice dropping to something dark and absolute. Not quickly. Not cleanly. I'm going to take everything he has, everything he is, and grind it into dust. Alice felt a thrill run through her at the cold certainty in his voice. Tell me, she whispered. Tell me what you're going to do. Chan Wu's eyes gleamed. Come with me. He led her to his study, settling her into the leather chair behind his desk while he opened his laptop. The screen illuminated his face in harsh blue light as files opened. Documents, photographs, bank statements, emails, years of information. I've been gathering this for 2 weeks, Chan Wu said. Since the night of the auction. Everything on Felix Kim. Every secret. Every crime. Every lie. He turned the laptop toward Alice. She leaned forward, scanning the documents. Offshore accounts in the Cayman Islands. Shell companies in Panama. Falsified import records. Bribes to city officials. Evidence of the auction. Photographs. Witness statements. Financial transactions. And more. So much more. This is... Alice's voice failed. Comprehensive, Chan Wu finished. Felix has been running illegal operations for years. Arms dealing. Money laundering. Human trafficking. He's built an empire on suffering. How did you get all this? Chan Wu's smile was cold. I have resources Felix can't even imagine. People who owe me favors. Hackers who can find anything. And time. I've been very patient. He closed the laptop and moved to stand behind Alice's chair, his hands coming to rest on her shoulders. Phase 1 begins tomorrow, he said quietly. Silent preparation is complete. Now comes the execution. Alice leaned back against him, feeling the solid strength of his body. What's Phase 1? Financial strangulation. The next morning, Alice woke to find Chan Wu already gone. She found him in his study hours later, still working, his desk covered in papers, and his phone constantly buzzing with incoming messages. It started, he said without preamble when she entered. What started? Felix's accounts in the Cayman Islands froze at 6 a.m. Chan Wu said, satisfaction evident in his voice. $3 million, completely inaccessible. Alice's eyes widened. How? I have friends in interesting places, Chan Wu said. The bank received an anonymous tip about suspicious activity. They're required by law to freeze the accounts pending investigation. Chan Wu pulled up another screen. His primary business account here in Seoul is being audited as we speak. The tax authority received documentation showing significant discrepancies in his reported income, he explained. From you? Alice asked, narrowing her eyes. From a concerned citizen, Chan Wu said with a slight smile. I would never interfere with government operations. Over the next week, Alice watched Chan Wu systematically dismantle Felix's financial empire. It was surgical, precise, devastating. Felix's investors began receiving anonymous packages, documents showing his illegal activities, evidence of falsified profits, proof that their money was financing criminal operations. One by one, they withdrew their investments. His largest client, a shipping company, suddenly terminated their contract after irregularities were discovered in the billing. His line of credit at 3 major banks was revoked following routine reviews of lending practices. His properties, the office building, the luxury apartment, even his car, were all leveraged against loans he could no longer service. Within 2 weeks, Felix's cash flow had completely dried up. He can't make payroll, Chan-woo reported one evening, scrolling through intercepted emails on his tablet. His employees are starting to quit. His suppliers are demanding payment up front. His landlord is threatening eviction. Alice sat beside him on the couch, watching the systematic destruction with a mixture of awe and satisfaction. He doesn't even know it's you, does he? She asked. He suspects, Chan-woo said, but he can't prove anything. And more importantly, he can't stop it. Alice leaned against Chan-woo's shoulder, feeling the solid warmth of him. What about Hannah? Chan-woo's smile turned sharp. Hannah's punishment is more personal, and it starts tomorrow. Hannah's world began to crumble in a different way. It started with her social media. Her carefully curated Instagram account, 425,000 followers, brand partnerships worth millions, was suddenly flooded with negative comments and accusations. Screenshots of private messages began appearing across multiple platforms. Messages where Hannah mocked Alice, called her racial slurs, and bragged about putting that charity case in her place. Within hours, the posts had gone viral. Korean netizens, notoriously unforgiving, tore into Hannah with savage efficiency. Her brand partnerships terminated their contracts immediately. Luxury companies removed her from their PR lists. Fashion shows uninvited her. How did you get her private messages? Alice asked, watching the social media meltdown in real time. She uses the same password for everything, Chan-woo said. Very poor security practices. More leaks followed. Evidence that Hannah had been sleeping with multiple married men, complete with hotel receipts and text message exchanges. Proof that her luxury lifestyle was entirely funded by Felix's illegal money. Screenshots showing she'd faked credentials about her education and background. Within a week, Hannah had lost 200,000 followers. Her remaining brand deals evaporated. Her friends, other influencers and socialites, publicly distanced themselves from her. She became toxic overnight. She tried calling me, Chan-woo mentioned casually one evening. 17 times. I didn't answer. What does she want? Alice asked. To beg, Chan-woo said simply. To negotiate. To offer me things in exchange for making it stop. Are you going to make it stop? Chan-woo looked at Alice, his expression serious. Do you want me to? Chan-woo asked. Alice thought about Hannah's cruelty, her mockery, her laughter as Alice had been sold. No, she said quietly. Let her fall. Chan-woo nodded, a hint of approval in his eyes. As you wish, he said. 3 weeks after the gala, Felix and Hannah's social isolation was complete. Felix tried to attend a business conference he had been scheduled to speak at for months. His name had been removed from the program. When he showed up anyway, security refused him entry. We're at capacity, they said, avoiding his gaze. The venue was half empty. He tried to meet with former business associates. Meetings were canceled at the last minute. Calls went unreturned. Emails bounced back. Hannah tried to attend a fashion show. She'd been front row for years. Her invitation had been revoked. When she showed up anyway, she was seated in the back. Then, halfway through the show, she was asked to leave. We need the seat for someone else, they said. The seat remained empty for the rest of the show. They tried restaurants where they were once regulars. Tables were suddenly unavailable. They tried clubs where they'd once held VIP status. Their names weren't on the list. Chan-woo, Alice said one evening, watching him work. How are you doing this? How are you everywhere at once? Chan-woo looked up from his laptop. I'm not everywhere, he said. But my reputation is. One word from me, and doors close. That's not power, Alice. That's respect earned through years of keeping my word and punishing those who cross me. He stood, moving to where she sat, his hands resting on the arms of her chair, caging her in. Felix put his hands on you, Chan-woo said softly. That means he put his hands on something of mine. And everyone in Seoul knows what happens to people who touch what belongs to Park Chan-woo. Alice's breath caught at the possessive intensity in his voice. I don't belong to you, she whispered, though her body was saying something entirely different. Not yet, Chan-woo agreed, his voice dropping lower. But you will, when you're ready, when you choose me. His thumb brushed her lower lip. And when you do, Alice, I'm going to make sure you never regret it. Heat flooded through her, and she had to resist the urge to pull him down to her. But Chan-woo stepped back, his control firmly in place. First, he said, we finish what we started. For weeks after the gala, the final phase began. Alice woke to find Chan-woo on the phone, speaking in rapid Korean, his expression grim but satisfied. When he hung up, he turned to her. "It's done," he said. "Felix was arrested an hour ago." Alice's heart jumped. "For what?" "Everything," Chan Wu said. "Human trafficking, money laundering, fraud, bribery. The prosecutors have enough evidence to put him away for 30 years. The evidence you gathered." "Evidence that was anonymously submitted to the authorities," Chan Wu corrected, "along with testimony from several of his former associates who decided cooperation was preferable to prosecution." He pulled up a news article on his tablet, showing it to Alice. The headline read, "Prominent businessman arrested in human trafficking ring." Felix's photo stared out from the screen. The same handsome, confident face, now haggard and desperate in a police photograph. Alice read the article, her hands trembling slightly. Multiple charges, multiple victims, evidence of an organized operation spanning years. "There were others," she said quietly. "Other women, before me. 12 that we could document," Chan Wu said grimly. "All of them have been contacted by authorities. All of them are willing to testify." Tears pricked Alice's eyes, not for herself, but for the women Felix had hurt and the lives he had destroyed. "He's going to prison," Chan Wu said, moving to sit beside her. "For a very long time. And the conditions won't be comfortable. I made sure certain information about his crimes reached the right people inside." Alice understood what that meant. "And Hannah?" she asked. "Hannah is being investigated as an accessory," Chan Wu said. "She knew about the trafficking. She participated. She helped him." He paused. "She'll likely face charges too, though her sentence will be lighter since she wasn't the primary operator." Alice nodded slowly, absorbing it all. It was over. Felix was finished. Hannah was ruined. Justice, real justice, had finally been served. "Thank you," Alice whispered. Chan Wu turned to face her fully, his hand coming up to cup her uninjured cheek. "You never have to thank me for protecting you," he said softly. "That's not something you earn, Alice. It's something you deserve." Then he kissed her. This kiss was different from the first. The first had been hunger and restraint finally breaking. This one was deeper, slower, certain. Chan Wu's mouth moved against hers with a tenderness that made her chest ache, his hands gentle as they framed her face. Alice melted into him, her hands finding his shoulders and sliding up into his hair. When they finally broke apart, both breathing hard, Chan Wu rested his forehead against hers. "I want you, Alice," he said roughly. "I've wanted you since the moment I saw you. But I need you to be sure. I need you to choose this. Choose me." Alice's heart thundered. For months, she had had no choices, no power, no voice. And now this dangerous, powerful man was giving her all three. "I choose you," Alice whispered. "I choose this." Chan Wu's eyes flared with something dark, possessive, and achingly tender. "Then come with me," he said, standing and offering his hand. Alice took it without hesitation. He led her upstairs through the quiet house to his bedroom. Inside, he turned to face her, his expression serious. "If you want to stop at any point," he said, "we stop. No questions. No disappointment. You have all the power here, Alice. Always." Alice stepped closer, her hands resting against his chest. "I don't want to stop," she said. "I want you to show me what you promised. Show me what it means to be worshipped." Chan Wu's control shattered beautifully. Chan Wu undressed her slowly, reverently, his hands trembling slightly as he revealed each inch of skin. When she stood before him in nothing but the lamplight, he took a step back just to look at her. "Perfect," he breathed. "You're perfect." Heat flooded through Alice. Not shame, but desire, power, and the intoxicating knowledge that this man wanted her desperately. He kissed her then, not rushed, not consuming, but deep and certain. The kind of kiss that carried intention. The kind that said this moment mattered. Chan Wu guided her toward the bed, never breaking eye contact, never taking control away from her. When she nodded, when she pulled him closer, he followed, always watching, always listening. The world narrowed to warmth and closeness, to whispered names and shared breath, to the quiet understanding that this was not possession, but choice. The door closed softly behind them, and everything else faded. Afterward, they lay tangled together, Chan Wu's arms wrapped around Alice, her head resting on his chest, listening to his heartbeat slow. "Stay with me," Chan Wu murmured into her hair. "Not as a guest, not as someone I'm protecting, but as mine, as my equal, my partner, my everything." Alice tilted her head up to look at him. "Is that a proposal?" Chan Wu's smile was soft and genuine, the first truly unguarded expression she had seen on his face. "It's a promise," he said, "that if you stay, I'll spend every day proving you made the right choice." Alice kissed him softly. "Then yes," she whispered, "I'll stay." A week later, Alice's phone rang at 3:47 a.m. She knew before she answered. Some part of her had always known this call would come. Chan Wu stirred beside her as she reached for the phone, his hand finding her waist in the darkness. "Hello." Alice's voice was steady, but her hand trembled. The doctor's voice was gentle but final. "Ms. Alice, I'm so sorry. Your brother passed away 20 minutes ago. We did everything we could, but his body just... It was time. He went peacefully." The phone slipped from Alice's hand. She didn't cry, didn't scream. She just sat in the darkness, feeling as though someone had hollowed out her chest and left nothing behind. Chan Wu sat up immediately, pulling her against him. "Alice, what happened?" "He's gone," she whispered. "My brother. He's gone." Chan Wu's arms tightened around her, and for a long moment, he said nothing, just held her. The funeral was small. Just Alice, Chan Wu, Mrs. Shin, and a handful of people from the hospital who had cared for her brother over the years. Alice stood at the graveside in a black dress, watching as they lowered the small coffin into the ground. He had been 12 years old, 12 years of fighting, 12 years of pain, 12 years of her sacrifice, and now he was gone. "I should feel something," Alice said quietly, her voice hollow. "Relief that he's not suffering anymore. Grief. Anger. Something." Chan Wu stood beside her, his hand holding hers. "You feel numb," he said. "That's normal, is it?" Alice asked, her eyes dry and empty. "I fought so hard for him. I gave up everything. And for what? He still died. I couldn't save him." "Alice." Felix was right, she continued, her voice breaking. "I was nothing. All that suffering, all that humiliation, and it didn't matter. He died anyway." Chan Wu turned her to face him, his hands gripping her shoulders firmly. "Don't," he said, his voice rough with emotion. "Don't let that bastard's words poison this moment. You love your brother. You fought for him. You gave him 3 more years than the doctors said he'd have. That matters." Tears finally streamed down Alice's face. "Does it?" she whispered. "He's still dead, Chan Wu. He's still gone." Chan Wu pulled her against his chest, one hand cradling the back of her head. "I know," he said softly. "I know, and I'm so sorry." Alice broke. She sobbed against Chan Wu's chest, her hands fisting in his jacket, all the grief she'd been holding back for months, years, pouring out. She cried for her brother, for the childhood he'd never had, for the future he'd never see, for all the sacrifices that hadn't been enough. Chan Wu held her through it all, his arms steady and strong, murmuring soft words in Korean that she didn't understand but felt anyway. When the tears finally subsided, Alice pulled back slightly, looking up at him. "I don't know how to do this," she whispered. "How to live without him. He was the reason for everything." Chan Wu cupped her face gently, his thumbs wiping away her tears. "Now you live for yourself," he said quietly. "You live because you survived, because you're strong, because you deserve a life that's more than just sacrifice." "I don't know if I can." "You can," Chan Wu said with absolute certainty. "And I'll be here. Every step, every moment. You're not alone, Alice. Not anymore." Alice closed her eyes, leaning into his touch. "Promise me something," she whispered. "Anything. Promise me that his life meant something. That all of this, everything I went through, it wasn't for nothing." Chan Wu was quiet for a moment, choosing his words carefully. "Your brother's life meant everything," he said finally. "Because he had you. Because someone loved him so completely that she was willing to sacrifice everything for him. That kind of love, that's not nothing, Alice. That's everything." He pulled her close again. "And what you went through, the pain, the humiliation, the suffering, that led you to me. It led you here, to this moment, to a life where you're safe and loved and free. Your brother would want that for you." Alice pressed her face into Chan Wu's chest, breathing in his scent, letting his words sink in. "How do you know?" she asked. "Because if I had a sister who loved me the way you loved him," Chan Wu said softly, "I'd want her to find happiness after I was gone. I'd want her to live fully, to love deeply, to know that she did everything she could, and that it was enough." Fresh tears slid down Alice's cheeks, but these were different, softer,